Hello. This video is a summary of and commentary on the second half of Chapter 8 of Frederick Wilhelmsen's book, Man's Knowledge of Reality. Chapter 8, Section 5 is titled Knowledge and Representation. The driving question of this chapter is, how can knowledge represent its object without being a copy of its object? Preparing to answer this question, we have discussed the intentional mode of being, by which a thing may be present in the mind of a knower. With this background, we can begin our analysis of representation. First comes a question of definition. What is representation? If we trace this word back to the root word represent, that is, represent, we find that we must first analyze the term presence. Etymologically, presence comes from words meaning to be before. There are two related ways a thing can be present. First, it can be before someone, that is, be in view. This type of presence necessarily involves being in a determinate place. Presence, in this sense, is the antonym of absence. But this first definition depends on the second, deeper definition of presence. Only what is can be before someone, so the more fundamental existential meaning of presence is existing, or present in existence. In the fullest sense, presence combines both of these meanings. It is a being in existence, but also a being before another. In other words, it is a relational mode of being, not closed in upon itself. When a being stands in existence before another, it is represented to that other. This being present to another is a new mode of existence a being can exercise. It marks the transition from a private to a public shared existence, so to speak. Next, let us consider the various possibilities of representation. A being may be represented to itself or to another. Purely material beings, like a stone, have no inner life and so can never represent themselves to themselves. A stone is present to itself physically, but never intentionally. It is not an object of knowledge for itself. It is incapable of self-knowledge. A purely physical being can be represented to another being, however. One way is physically. If the stone hits me, it is present to me physically. A stone can also be present to me from a distance when light travels from it to my eyes. Finally, a physical being can be present to another being in a sign. A sign is a thing or action that makes known something other than itself. Signs signify or represent the signified beings to a knower being. For example, smoke is a sign of fire. When I see the smoke, it not only conveys to me the reality, smoke is there, but it also signifies the fire that is the smoke's origin. This event is a representation in the intentional order. I know there is fire because of what I know about the smoke I see. When I see the smoke and know that an unseen fire has caused it, the fire itself has three different levels of being. First, it is physically present at its place and time as fire. Second, it is physically represented in the sky by the smoke it generates. Third, it is intentionally represented in the mind of a knowledge-capable observer who sees the smoke and knows that smoke means fire. So far, we have two meanings of representation. It means present in relation to another being, physically, and present in relation to another being, intentionally, as knowledge. There is a third meaning of representation, bound up with the nature of signs and signifying. The third meaning of representation is present in place of something else. In this sense, a sign represents the thing it signifies. Let us call these the physical, the intentional, and the ambassadorial or substitutive meanings of the term represent. Like an ambassador, the sign acts on behalf of an absent party. This sense of representation is the root of the idealist philosopher's accusation against the realist. If the realist thinks knowledge is a stand-in for the object known, like an ambassador stands in for his sovereign, then realism is copy theory, and thus false. But this is not how the realist conceives of knowledge. To explain this, we should distinguish between two kinds of signs. An instrumental sign signifies another thing while retaining its own particular being. A road sign pointing toward Chicago signifies that city, but it is also a 10 by 8 foot piece of green metal. It could be used in a physical way, as shelter from a storm, for example, quite independently of its signifying function. But in addition to instrumental signs, there are formal signs. A formal sign has no being beyond its signifying act. It points toward another reality, but other than that pointing toward, it is nothing in itself. There is no physical residue left over, nothing to use as shelter in a storm, so to speak. Knowledge is a formal sign of its object. All signs except knowledge are two realities. A, they are things existing in the natural order. B, they are signs. This is the solution to the problem of this chapter. Knowledge represents its object, not by being a mental copy of the object, but by being a formal sign of the object. Our error on this point may come from our supposing knowledge to be a thing and then asking what sort of thing it is. Knowledge is not a thing, but an act. My knowledge of a horse is nothing more than the being known of the horse to me. It is the real horse's being intentionally in my mind. Knowledge is this representation of real beings in the intentional order of knowing minds. When we realize this, we can begin to clear up many confusions about the nature of knowledge. My knowledge of the planet Saturn is not a pattern of brainwaves inside my head, nor is it an immaterial idea copy of Saturn present in my mind. Instead, my knowledge of Saturn is a relationship between me as a knowing being and the real planet millions of miles away. It is a union of knower and known in the intentional order. There's much more for us to explore about this, of course. We have just scratched the surface so far. This concludes my summary and commentary on Chapter 8, Sections 5 and 6 of Wilhelmsen's book. I look forward to discussing it with you soon. Thanks for watching today. Goodbye.